An inheritance can feel like a blessing and a burden. You want to honor where it came from, be values aligned, help people you love, and you also don't want to be naive, pressured, or reckless. Today, I'm talking about inheritance, being values aligned without being naive, how to adopt a stewardship mindset, set governance guardrails, and avoid the two extremes that ruin legacies: hoarding and fear, and reckless generosity from guilt. Don't forget, you can download the Inheritance Guardrails Toolkit on my website, and you can watch this episode on YouTube. Now, let's make a plan.
Yeah. So they might go
What's happening, my optionality builders, my high earners? We are building real power on purpose. Welcome back to the Do Different Better show, where we talk wealth wisdom and money moves, simple, strategic, and for grown folks only. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, CEO of Connect Up Institute, managing director of the Integrated Capital Fund, and your wealth identity coach and money co-pilot. I'm so excited to have you here today. Today's episode is called Inheritance, Being Values Aligned Without Being Naive. This is so valuable and important in this moment. We are currently experiencing what's being called the Great Wealth Transfer. The Great Wealth Transfer is the historic intergenerational transfer of an estimated 84 to 124 trillion dollars in assets, primarily from baby boomers to younger generations like Gen Xers, millennials, and Gen Zers in the United States through 2048. It is considered the largest transfer of assets in history, with roughly $1 trillion per year shifting by 2032. That represents a lot of inheritance. And discussing inheritance is one of those conversations people need but don't often know how to have. But because inheritance can come with money, yes, but it also comes with emotional weight that no one really talks about it. I had a guest on my show last year who talked about his emotional journey with his inheritance, particularly because his inheritance came with the passing of his mother. So as you can imagine, it comes with grief. It can also come with a number of family dynamics. One of my favorite shows on Netflix is, if you've ever caught it, The Gentleman. And the first episode of the television series is when the younger son inherits what is traditionally been the inheritance of the oldest son, which is the land, the castle that they're living in. That's a very strong dynamic, and if you've ever seen it, the brother has a very, very visceral reaction to hearing the news that his brother is inheriting the family home. But it also, for the other person, comes with a lot of guilt, right? And it comes with confusion of, why me? I didn't do anything to get this money or get this wealth. And for some people, it comes with pressure so big that they either freeze or they start making emotional decisions too quickly without any framing. So let me say this right up front. An inheritance can feel like a blessing and a burden at the same time. You can be grateful and still feel overwhelmed. You can be values aligned and still feel scared. You can want to do right by the money and still not know exactly where to begin or how. I want to say this, that is normal, completely normal. And this episode is about helping you move from emotion-driven reaction to what I like to call stewardship. Because the word I want you to hold today is not, I've got this windfall. It's not luck. It's not even opportunity, though it can be that as well. But the word I want you to think about and adopt is stewardship. So let's talk about what that actually means. Stewardship means this money has a job. I've said this a lot. Money has a job. has a purpose. And guess what? You have free will. You get to decide what that purpose is. It's not something that happens to you. It has a purpose. And purpose means it needs a structure. Stewardship is not about worshiping the money. That's what happens sometimes, but that's not what it's about. And it's not about hoarding it, never to be seen the light of day. It is not about proving your worth through how fast you can give it away. It is about protecting the principle, aligning the use of the money with your values, and putting systems in place so your emotions don't run the whole entire show. A steward asks, what is this money for? What is my responsibility to it? What needs to be protected first? What decisions should happen slowly and not emotionally? How do I honor both the source of this money and the future it came with? And for some, it's really important to understand where it came from, right? How was this money made? Was this money produced at the harm of someone else? These are all questions that I encourage you to grapple with before you even start making decisions on what to do with the money. Understand some of these back-ended things or under the surface things that have to do with the money. And that is a very different mindset from, I have money now, so I need to do something big with it immediately, right? That's kind of what we see on the gram or we see in television shows, right? I want to be especially clear about this. Values aligned does not mean loosey-goosey. And I have a whole episode that's all about values aligned investing, right? Generous does not mean unguarded. And purposeful does not mean being impulsive. Now, I want to name two extremes people often swing between when inheritance shows up. And those two extremes are hoarding versus being reckless, having reckless generosity. So the first extreme is hoarding the money. I have been guilty of this, I promise you. And hoarding sounds like, I'm not touching any of it, or I'm too scared to do the wrong thing, or I just needed to sit there so that I can feel safe, right? What if I mess this up? What if I need all of it later? Now, on one level, caution makes 100% sense. That's no one's telling you that you shouldn't be cautious. But hoarding is often based in fear dressed up as prudence. It can make you from making any thoughtful decisions at all instead of spending it all, which is the second extreme, reckless generosity. And here might be some of the things that you might be thinking or you've experienced where that is reflected. I should help everybody. I shouldn't keep this money for myself. This could solve so many problems. I need to make something meaningful happen right now. Or I don't want people to think I've changed. And we can convince ourselves that we're being noble because it sounds noble. But if it's happening without a structure or without time or without guardrails, it's not stewardship. It's emotional spending. Now, why do people swing between these two different extremes? Because inheritance is rarely about money. The money is just the thing. It's just the tool. It's just the thing. It's about meaning. And for some people, inheritance, even the word triggers scarcity. I can't lose this. I may never have it again because an inheritance usually comes one time and often at the result of something bad happening, right? A death, some other kinds of incidents. But for others, it triggers guilt. You might think, I didn't earn this in the same way. I should share it. I shouldn't have it. I should use it for other people. For others, it triggers an identity conflict. What does it mean about me if I keep it when I didn't earn it? What does it mean about me if I spend it? What does it mean about me if I invest it and make more money off of this money that I didn't earn? And for some people, especially if this wealth is entering a family system with strong expectations, the money becomes a symbol. It becomes this emotional territory or emotional chess piece on a family dynamic chessboard. And that's why you need more than just good intentions. You actually need governance. But before we get there, I want to make one thing 100% plain, right? And that is that being values aligned means something. And here's what it means. It means that your money decisions reflect what matters to you. Your giving reflects intention and not guilt. Your investing reflects your goals, not hype. And your structure protects what is meant to endure. Being naive means you have no guardrails, you have no timeline, you have no decision rules, you have no governance. You're not differentiating between a good idea and an emotionally compelling request. Now, here's the line I want you to remember. If it's not protected, it's not stewardship, it's just spending. No different than clicking on those cart items on your latest website, right? Shopping website. And that is not protection. And that protection is not selfish. It is not cold. It is how you make the values sustainable. Now, I want to lightly tie this into your broader framework language because this actually matters. So we're going to tie this back into wealth capacity and with inheritance. So an inheritance often increases your wealth capacity challenge before it increases your peace, because more money creates more complexity, right? It creates more decisions. It creates more requests. It creates more pressure. It creates more certainty and creates more fear of making a mistake, but also more internal debate and frustration within yourself and insecurity, right? So the answer is not just trust yourself and wing it. The answer is going to be creating structure. And that structure is what you're going to build in this episode. So I hope if you are anticipating an inheritance, and if you don't know, you're like, you know what, Elaine, I don't know if I'm going to get an inheritance. Ask the question. Please, please, please. I put something on Instagram about an incident that I had recently. I was sitting at dinner and happened to start a casual conversation with the table next to us. And once the woman learned about what I did, she was sharing about what she was going to be doing with some of her assets when she died, and that she hadn't told her son, who ironically was sitting at the table, that she was planning on giving her condo away. And she said she was going to be giving the condo away to a nonprofit. And I asked her, have you told them? And she said, first, she looked very puzzled. Like, why was I asking her that? And she replied, no, she hadn't told the organization. I said, you need to tell them. They need to, not only as an individual, the individual needs to be able to wrap their head around what's coming, when it might be coming, and how to prepare for that, how they might want to think through that, how they might be feeling about that, instead of them not only processing the grief of losing you as a loved one and this thing called an inheritance, but even for an organization, they need to put things in place to receive that inheritance well, or that bequeath well, right? That gift well. And oftentimes people think that they're being stoic by not telling the people that they're inheriting. And I want, if you are the person who is like going to provide an inheritance, please, 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 I implore you to tell the people that they're getting an inheritance. You don't have to tell them how much, although I would encourage you to do that, but I get it. But at least let them know so they can start processing those feelings instead of trying to process those feelings and thoughts while also grieving for the loss of their loved one. But also, if you're on the inheritor side, you have family members who are aging. Ask them, hey, are you planning to do an inheritance? You're not necessarily asking for yourself, although you are asking for yourself, but say, hey, am I being considered? I would just like to know so that I can start to think about constructively how I might want to approach managing the inheritance. You might be surprised what their response might be. Now, they might be offended. I come from a family where nobody talks about money. But again, if it's something that you feel that you have an anxiety around, I encourage you to settle that anxiety by at least asking the question, right? So, coming up in the next segment, I'm going to be talking about governance basics. These are simple human, non-corporate governance that you are going to be implementing. The kind that helps you protect both the money and your relationships, because governance is not about just mistrust. Governance is about creating clarity, not only for you, but for those around you. And then coming up after that, I'm going to be talking about the 90-day inheritance plan. So you know exactly how to move from protect to decide to deploying. So I will see you after the break. Welcome back to the Do Different Better show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. Today, we're talking about inheritance, and we're talking about all the thoughts and feelings that you may be having if you know that you're getting an inheritance or you've maybe recently received an inheritance. I also talked about the almost 124 trillion with a T, trillion dollar transfer of wealth that is expected to happen in the next 5 to 7 years. And so there's a high degree of likelihood that you may be an inheritor. So this is a really important episode to really help you understand and guide you through how you might want to manage that and not sit from a place of guilt and shame or hoarding, but really think about how do you want to execute your values? How do you want to maintain or understand how to leverage this inheritance for you? So right now we're going to move into governance. Now, before anybody zones out and you're like, governance, that sounds like a really big fancy word, because it sounds like maybe that's something you've heard in a board meeting where there's legal pads and lots of lawyers, but I'm going to simplify this, right? I'm using a big word to talk about a very simple concept. Governance is a structure that keeps your values from collapsing under pressure, emotional pressure, any other kind of pressure, right? Guilt pressure, anything. That's it. Governance is what turns, I want to be thoughtful, into, I now have what it takes. Here is how I make thoughtful decisions. That's the difference. That's all that we're talking about, right? And the reason why this matters is because inheritance without guardrails becomes an emotional management with a bank balance. So I'm going to help you build a very simple 4-part governance setup. The first is the purpose statement. So break out your money journal or your financial journal, right? First, you're going to create a purpose statement. The first thing inheritance needs is a purpose statement. What is the money for? It is not 10 pages. It's not a soliloquy. It is in plain English. It's bullet points, if that's what you prefer. Maybe you start off with a simple paragraph that then outlines some specifics. But here are some examples. This is not meant to be a long, novel. It is meant to give you some perspective really quickly that is not emotionally based. So here's an example. This inheritance is meant to increase long-term sustainability and optionality for my household. Here's another example. This inheritance is meant to support family stewardship, measured generosity, and long-term investing. Here's another one. This inheritance is meant to preserve principal, meaning the actual amount that was left, fund intentional giving, and support future opportunities. And I would even define maybe what those opportunities, give an example in parentheses. The purpose statement matters because it what becomes your anchor, right? An objective lens by which you can look at opportunities. If someone asks for something and you're considering a major move, you can ask yourself, does this fit the purpose of the money? Right? Because money has a job. The one question saves people from a lot of expensive confusion. Number 2, decision rights. This is who decides what and when. If you're the sole inheritor, this may simply mean, what decisions can I make alone? What decisions require a pause? What decisions require outside advice or counsel? If this is family wealth or a shared inheritance, then decision rights matter even more. Who approves giving? Who approves investment changes? What counts as a major decision? Is it by a dollar amount? Is it structurally? What needs everyone's input and what doesn't? Sometimes those are set in place by the person who has left the wealth, but sometimes it's not. Maybe sometimes it's there is what's called an executor, but the executor doesn't always necessarily have decision-making power. So that's another reason why these decision rules are very important, because people often assume we'll figure it out as we go. And there might be some decisions that require, like you didn't think about, and so now you've got to come up with an additional structure for those. But by and large, 80-20 rules apply. These decision rules should help you be able to decide 80% of the situations that you find yourself in. And that is exactly how family friction can get expensive when there's no clarity on like how that needs to happen. Decision rights reduce resentment because expectations are now clear, cut, and dry and agreed upon by everyone involved. Number 3, cadence. Cadence means that you do not make every decision in real time. You can create a rhythm for the decision making. And here are some examples of that. Maybe you do a quarterly review of investments. I sit on a corporate foundation board, and that's something that we do. Now, that's an inheritance in a different format, right? You can create an annual giving budget, especially as it relates to family members. You can do a monthly check-in during the first 90 days by offering scheduled family conversations rather than reacting while people are upset within conversations. Cadence matters because it reduces panic and urgency. Not every decision needs to happen today. In fact, one of the best inheritance rules is the first big move is often to slow down. I'm a big fan of that. And that brings me to one of the most important guardrails. And that guardrail is what I call the 90-day cooling off period, right? They tell you this like in a variety of different ways. You shouldn't make any major decisions in the first 90 days or even 120 days after a death or any major life event. An inheritance is no different. If an inheritance has recently landed, one of the smartest things you can do is to avoid any major emotional deployment in the first 90 days. And here's what that means. That means no giant gifts. That means no major investments. That cousin who says, hey, I got a business opportunity. No, not for the first 90 days, right? No major investments made from pressure, no matter where it's coming from, whether it's the executive of the estate or your great aunt or cousin. No, I need to do something meaningful right now spending, right? No family loans made for emergency. No drastic portfolio changes because somebody at dinner had a hot take that they are sharing with you, an investment tip that you've just got to be a part of. Instead, you protect first, then decide. Now, Let's talk about the two main areas where guardrails matter the most: generosity and investing. Here are some guardrails for generosity. If you want to be values aligned, generosity also needs structure. Here's what that can look like. You can set an annual giving budget. I talked about this on the last episode, and here it's coming up again, right? You're not going to respond as things come up. You're going to have a real budget. And you can set that budget where it's at a certain amount for the year, which is then divvied up month over month over month. And if you don't get any ask, it rolls over to the next month. Or you can say, hey, here's the goal for the year, and I give out quarterly, whatever that looks like. But the whole idea is that you have a set amount that you're committed to, you know what that is, and you're monitoring it. You also want to set a giving criteria. This can be a percentage of the portfolio, or maybe it's a flat amount. It can be one time, or it can represent annual giving. And you want to decide what qualifies and what doesn't. If this giving is for family or friends, or talk about a more formal, I'll talk about more formal giving in another episode. I may have already talked about it in a previous episode last year. But maybe you give to emergencies with a clear one-time need. Maybe you support education goals. Maybe you're supporting health issues. Maybe you are giving to causes that are aligned with your values. Or perhaps you are providing family support with a time-bound plan, right? And we also talked about that in the previous episode. But you're supporting the outcome and not the habit. And this was what that means. That means you pay the vendor directly when that's appropriate or available. You perhaps help with a one-time bridge that's not ongoing lifestyle funding. You're not funding somebody else's baseline, right? Maybe you're providing matching funds of like, hey, if you put in half, I'll put in half, right? I did that with my son growing up when he wanted, it was the new Xbox when that came out. And I told my son, if you raise half the money, I don't care what that looks like. Maybe you're working, maybe you're doing chores around the house, whatever the case may be. Is you raise them half of the money, I will give you the other half, right? But you can also just support with a plan, not indefinite freelancing from your balance, from your account, right? But I also want you to watch for some of the red flags, right? Because you can be giving, but doesn't mean that people aren't necessarily leaning on you as a continuous source. So you want to be looking for repeated emergencies, and there's no change in behavior or no change in their structure to help them move to a place of more security or more stability. Perhaps it's an unclear use of funds. They're being cagey about what they actually need the funds for. And as you ask more questions, they're getting more defensive. That's a red flag. Maybe they're using pressure tactics. You're like, oh, this has to happen right away. It's got to happen by 6:00 tonight, or it's got to be in the bank by 7:00 tomorrow morning. That's a red flag for me. Or using guilt. You have it. You've always had it. Everyone's liked you more. You've always been in a position of this XYZ. Okay. Maybe, but also don't make a decision because you've been cornered with guilt, right? But also urgency that doesn't let you think, right? If you're feeling like, I can't wrap my head around this, I can't understand this, it's probably not a good time to make a decision, right? That's a red flag. Because oftentimes, very few deadlines are real deadlines, right? A lot of deadlines are perceived deadlines, but we use them so that we can move a certain behavior. That's really the purpose of a lot of deadlines. So is that really the deadline? I can't take 48 hours to think about this. That would be a red flag. Again, being values aligned does not mean that you have no boundaries. Now I want to switch to the guardrails for investing. An inheritance can create a lot of anxiety here because people feel like every move has to be 100% perfect. And I'm here to tell you it does not. It does need to be thoughtful. So I'm going to give you some guardrails to help you. The first guardrail is separate your buckets. Not all money should do the same thing. I talked about this in the beginning of the year. Set up the different jobs that you want money to work to do. Money is a tool. It should have a job. Just like a hammer hammers nails and pulls out nails, a screwdriver screws in nails and unscrews nails. Money is a tool and has purposes. It has jobs that it can do, but you get to exercise what those jobs are. Some of it, the job, it might need to be liquid. And remember, liquid means you have access to it relatively quickly. 30 days or less, you can access that money. Some may need to support medium or long-term goals. Maybe you're saving to buy a house. Maybe you're looking to buy a business. Some of it may be a long-term investment capital, right? Some of it may be support giving of like, hey, this is somebody's college fund, right? Do not treat all inheritance money like just one big giant glob. I want you to think about protecting liquidity first. This is where your broader framework helps. Remember, baseline, buffer, and brick house. Then optionality and long-term investing. We've got to get our house in order. If an inheritance lands and you don't have your foundational liquidity in place, that is where I want you to start. That should be the first thing before entertaining anything, is setting up your baseline, your buffer, and your brick house. Do not skip this because investing sounds more exciting. You're not at that capacity to be able to do that. Next, use a fee-only fiduciary if you need support. If you need an advisor, and I did a whole show on certified planners, wealth managers, wealth investment advisors, look for somebody who is fee-only and a fiduciary, able to explain things clearly, not pushing you a whole lot of products, and they are aligned with your goals and your values. Because inheritance can attract a lot of opinions. The louder the opinions, the more you're going to need your own structure, right? But also make sure that you like this person. This is somebody who's advising you on one of the more intimate things in your life and one of the things that's more pervasive in your life, which is your money. So if you don't like, if you find that you're talking with somebody and you don't particularly like them, they're not the right person. Find somebody that you like, that talks to you, that doesn't talk down to you, that's not condescending, that's not patronizing, that isn't chauvinistic. Find somebody that you're in lockstep with, that you feel like you're lockstep with. And don't forget, feel like you can't fire them, right? If you are working with them for a while and you're like, it's getting to a point where it doesn't feel good, inquire about that with yourself. And if you can objectively say no, that you really think it's just a relational thing, not that they're telling you how to better manage your money, because that's a different thing, then consider moving to another advisor. Now, let me add one more governance piece that many people skip, and that is documentation. Documentation is not just for institutions. It's for peace of mind, okay? This can be simple. This can look like it's a purpose statement, it's a giving policy, and it's a decision rule list, as well as an account map and key advisor contacts and notes on what the money is intended to do, right? If you have all of this documented, you reduce decision fatigue, family confusion, and your own future mission or investment drift. Now, coming up, we're going to turn all this into a 90-day inheritance plan. What to do first, what to protect, what to pause, and how to avoid both fear and fear-based hoarding and guilt-based generosity. I'll see you after the break. You're listening to the Do Different Better show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. Welcome back to the Do Different Better show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. Today, we've been talking about inheritance and what that means and how to be values aligned versus naive. Now we're moving into the finish line. This is the action segment. So if you're driving, if you're taking a walk and you're listening to this, I want you to bookmark this, come back to it, because this is where you're going to put pen to paper. Because if an inheritance lands, the goal is not to do something impressive. The goal is to protect, decide, then deploy, but not all at once. In order, here is my 3-phase process. Phase number 1, these are going to be days 1 through 7, right? This is your protect phase. This is where you do all the boring, grown-up things that keep you from making expensive mistakes later on. So here's what that includes. That includes planning the funds, placing the funds in a safe, appropriate holding account. They may already be in one, but it may be in someone else's name. So you want to transfer that into an account that you hold. You might be on the account maybe or transferred, but if it is an account that you can just transfer into your name, that is fine as well. But the whole idea is that you're putting that money into an appropriate holding account. If you're not sure where or how to do this, a certified financial planner or wealth advisor, the one that you choose will depend on the size of the inheritance or your financial needs. And I've done a whole episode on that. Could be getting a professional could be really helpful. You may have inherited one with the inheritance. So that's also something to look at. You're also going to confirm the account titles and the type of access, meaning not only how you access it, when you can access it, how frequently you can access it. That is super, super important. And what does it take? Does it take you and another person to access it? That's also important. You're going to gather the estate documents, the tax information, contacts, and the account details. And you're building what I'll call is your inheritance packet. Okay, that's what you're going to do in the first 7 days. The inheritance packet is going to include account information, estate documents. It's going to be contact information for the attorney or accountant or advisors that are involved. It's going to be all of your tax notes. It's going to be the beneficiary information and a first draft of your purpose statement. Now, here's the important rule in this phase. Protection comes from interpretation. In other words, don't spend the first week trying to answer every existential question you might be feeling or that is being asked of you. Protect the money first, okay? Phase 2, this is days 8 through 30, right? This phase is decision-making, not deployment. We're not moving any money. In this phase, this is where you're going to clarify, what is the money for? What portion needs to protect my baseline, my buffer, and my brick house? What portion is for medium-term goals? What portion, if any, is available for giving? What boundaries do I need before the asks start coming? This is where you want to write your guardrails. So here are some examples that you can consider. And again, I don't encourage you to do all of these all at the same time, but maybe one or two. No major gifts or loans in the first 90 days. If it's recurring, it needs a policy line item. If I feel guilt, urgency, I wait 24 hours. If it threatens my baseline or buffer, it's a no. I do not fund patterns. I do not co-sign. I do not make portfolio changes based on family pressure or social media content. That list, that's not rigidity. That's stewardship. And if you need support during this phase, this is a good time to interview a fee-only fiduciary advisor or talk to a tax professional if that is relevant or meaningful. Phase 3, that is days 31 to 90. Now is when you get to deployment. And let me be clear, you don't have to deploy, okay? But if you're going to deploy, this is where it can show up. And deployment does not mean spend. It means assign. This is where you allocate based on purpose. You might assign a portion to strengthen your buffer and brick house. You might assign a portion to your flex fund for optionality cash. You might assign a portion to long-term investing. You might assign a portion to medium-term goals. Maybe there's a big vacation you've been wanting to take. Maybe there's a workshop that you wanted to do or a certification you wanted to get you advancement in your job. You can assign a portion to a structured giving pool. Maybe it's a donor advised fund. Maybe you're going to give out money to your kids, to your cousins, to other family members. The key is that deployment follows policy. Again, you are assigning, you're not necessarily giving the money out. That may happen, but I just want to make that distinction. And this is not pressure, this is not guilt, and this is not fear. It is policy. It is guiding objectively how you're going to manage this money. Now, I want to make this practical with a few decision rules that can help you avoid the two extremes. And there are 5 of them. So I'm going to get through these. And once again, pick what you feel resonates with you the most. Rule number 1, no major gifts or loans in the first 90 days. This protects you from emotional urgency. Rule number 2, if it's recurring, it needs a policy line item, right? Recurring support is not a one-time exception. It's a real obligation, so I need you to treat it like such. Rule number 3, if I feel guilt or urgency, I will wait 24 hours. 24, 48, 36, 72, a week, whatever that number is, it's whatever you feel comfortable with. You do not know an instant access to your nervous system, right? Rule number 4, if it threatens my baseline or my buffer or my brick house, it's an unequivocal no. Period. That's it. You cannot be values aligned if your values bankrupt your stability. And rule number 5, I do not fund patterns. I can support outcomes. I do not fund repetition without responsibility. And we all have that one family member. They just keep coming back. They can't seem to get their stuff together. Now, let's talk about family expectations because they often show up and they show up fast, especially when you've now taken on money. You do not know anyone the details of your inheritance. Let me say that one more time. You do not owe anyone the details. You can be transparent enough to be respectful without being fully exposed. Here's some useful language that you can use to be able to talk about that. I'm taking time to make a thoughtful plan. Simple, easy, non-negotiable, doesn't require anything extra. Here's another one. I'm not making big decisions very quickly. You're not going to say in 90 days. You're not going to tell them that. You said, I'm not making decisions quickly. Next one. I have a structure in place for how I handle requests. Next one. I'm working from a plan and not from emotion. You might even want to write these down because in the moment, you're not going to have the language ready for you. So you can write these down. That's what I used to do, especially I used to do a lot of sales. And before I got really good at sales, I literally would write down on a Post-it these sort of call and response so I could be ready until I got them memorized in my head. But here's another one. I'm not available for open-ended support, but I can look at specific things through my process. That last line really matters. It says, I have a process. Process protects relationships because it depersonalizes the no. It's not about I'm saying no to you. I have a process that I need to honor, and I'm going to take this through that process. It's not saying that I don't care about you. It's saying that I have a framework by which I make my decisions. Now, let's tie this back to the wealth identity because certain identities will still need different safeguards, right? So here are some of the pitfalls as it relates to inheritance. I'm talking to you first, my caretakers. You guys want to just take care of everybody? You need hard generosity rules because guilt will try to run the show for you. Also, because that's been a pattern in how your family has dealt with you, it's going to be hard to now start to shift that. For my builders, you need to avoid making the system so complicated that you actually never act or make a decision. For my maximizers, you need a cadence so that you don't endlessly research and over-optimize. And it's about a boundary around, I'm going to make this decision in a certain amount of time, but I'm also going to make the decision in a certain amount of time, right? My minimalist strategist, you need support and structure so avoidance doesn't lead you to just be out here drifting. No matter your identity, the principle is the exact same, that money should not be governed by your mood or emotions or anxiety. So let's close this out with a deeper truth. Inheritance is not just about the money you received. It's about what you do next. It's about whether this becomes a short burst of activity or a long term tool for stability, optionality, and meaning. It's about whether generosity is sustainable. It's about whether impact is protected. It's about whether grief, gratitude, and values can coexist with structure. And I'm here to tell you, yes, they can. So here's your next step. I want you to go to the website. I want you to bookmark this episode. You can go to the website. You can download the Inheritance Guard Rules Toolkit. I want you to go and talk to someone in your family if you're expecting to get an inheritance. And I want you to start first with drafting your purpose statement. If you have even an inkling that you might be receiving inheritance, start now. Don't wait till you get the inheritance, especially if they're not telling you, they won't answer your question of whether you're getting an inheritance. You can still work on this now. You don't have to wait. Work on your purpose statement. Start defining your policies. Set your first round of decision rules. And here's another way to practice this. Maybe you get a bonus every year. Use your bonus as an opportunity to practice what you would do with an inheritance. It's a great opportunity because it's a windfall that comes. So again, you can check us out on YouTube, watch me on YouTube, but you can also listen to the show every Sunday on AM 950. But I want you to remember the goal is not just to receive money. The goal is to steward it well. And I want you to turn money into meaning and protect what you have received. I will see you next time when I help you do different better.